the best thing I've been able to do in my short tenure. So thank you for allowing me to be here. And I'm sitting in complete gratitude for this moment for Ms. Huerta. That's just incredible. Hi, everybody. My name is Julian High, and I'm the new President and Chief Executive Officer of United Way of Southern Nevada. And I'm so very thrilled to be here today. And I wanted to introduce myself because some of you may not have been on the call last week, and we wanted to make sure that I was able to say hello again. And again, welcome and thank you for continuing to join the nonprofit sector call space. It's such an important space for us, and for continuing to share this special space with us. So if you'll please share your name and organization with us in the chat box as we welcome all of you. So welcome to all of you, and thank you again for being here. Today we have a special edition of the nonprofit sector call, where we will be hosting our Hispanic Heritage Month Panel, and the discussion will be inspired by the PBS documentary, Dolores. That is why I wanted to take this moment to thank our partners and support our very special guest today, our extremely special guest. As you may have noticed already, we have the icon and star of the film Dolores with us. Can you imagine on our nonprofit sector call? I mean, what a moment for United Way of Southern Nevada. I'm really moved and overcome with gratitude. So as you may have noticed, our star is already on the call, and we're so very excited, Ms. Dolores Huerta. Welcome. We're all very excited that you could join us today. We want to capture this special moment. So can I ask everyone to turn their cameras on so we can take a quick screenshot? I'm going to give you all a few minutes so that we can set this up, if you would. And while we're doing that, I'm going to ask someone from my team to give me the signal when we have captured the picture. So it's just going to take a couple seconds here.
Okay, I'm seeing all the smiling faces. Smile. 3, 2, 1. One second. Perfect. Thank you, Julian.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. We also want to thank everyone who made the complimentary screenings of the documentary possible. Thank you, Office of Councilwoman Olivia Diaz, Las Vegas, the UNLV William S. Boyd School of Law, Art House Theaters, PBS, and the Milagro Foundation. We are eager to get the conversation started, so I will pass it along to our moderator and leader for today, who will kick off the program and introduce our panelists. Welcome, Councilwoman Diaz. Thank you for your leadership and partnership during Hispanic Heritage Month and beyond. On behalf of the United Way and our partners, thank you so much. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, President High. I want to first and foremost commend you on an amazing team you have here at United Way, because not only are you recognizing that we're stronger and better together, but that you're honoring every single culture that is possible and viable through these kinds of mediums. And I know that right now through the pandemic, sometimes it seems more challenging or tasking to bring community together and bring awareness and just bring us together to celebrate the greatness of all of our contributions. And so I am grateful that you guys not only do it for Hispanic Heritage Month, but you do it for as many cultural groups as are celebrated and honored in our country. So with that, I'm super excited that I get to moderate this panel. I saw so many things yesterday in the film that gave me goosebumps because I too was a teacher, and then I made the leap from teaching into politics because I wanted to be an agent of change for my community. And it was just amazing to see that Dolores was that trailblazer who did it back in the times of organizing farm workers and always being there in la lucha, and that lucha has continued on. It didn't stop at creating that farm workers union. It has continued over time. It's just changed in focus and emphasis because we should be about not leaving any community member behind. And so, Dolores, I just was mesmerized by seeing how you fought so arduously for equality, making sure that all communities had access and equity to whether it be better communities, better healthcare, better working conditions and living conditions. I mean, it really takes someone who's all in and a champion to constantly be battling day in and day out, because I've taken my share of battles, but I just put myself in your shoes. I don't know if I would have been as strong as you were during the times when women weren't necessarily acknowledged as equals. And so you also were one of those trailblazers that showed a lot of little girls like myself that being in positions of leadership is doable, that we do have the skill sets, that we do have the love of our community, and we have the smarts to go along with that love that make us amazing leaders in positions of whether it be organizing movements or making legislation at the state level. And so you are to be commended for all of that amazing work. And also how, as a mom, I have a 10-year-old, and how you had your children to also, help you in this journey, because it wasn't just us leaping into these battles, but we also brought our families with us, and we tried to do as much as we could for our families and for families of others. And sometimes when we're in La Lucha, our families have to sometimes be the soldiers behind the scenes, holding us up and making sure that we are at the forefront of those picket lines, of those speeches we have to give. And sometimes they share us with everyone and they get very little of our time. And so, I feel that is very, very important for us women to see that when we have the right support structures behind us, family helping us, friends helping us make sure that our families are taken care of while we're taking care of others, that's comunidad, right? That's where we really know that our family is beyond just who our blood is, but it's also folks who are helping us make sure that we take care of our own. Another powerful message from the movie is being proud of where we come from and who we are, because if we know who we are and we know our stories, we can continue to be proud of our heritage, of our ancestors, of all the work that has been done, before we arrived on this planet. And there's that quote about he who doesn't know, or she who doesn't know her history is doomed to repeat it. And we can't let Dolores's hard work go to waste. We need to continue to advocate. We need to continue to make sure that people know that this battle isn't new, that we are continuing. She's passing on the baton to us so that we can now continue to fight for justice, equality, equity, and all of the things we want every community member to be able to enjoy. And so, Dolores, it gives me goosebumps that you're here with us today. It's so amazing. And I just want to open it up and pass the mic on to you by asking you, why is Hispanic Heritage Month important?
Oh, it's so important because we know that the history of Hispanics in the United States, and our history is U.S. history. It is United States history. And unfortunately, a lot of the history that really affects us today is not taught in our schools. And so people don't even know. In fact, sometimes even we, and I'm speaking of myself as a Mexican American, I thought I knew our history, but I didn't. There's a documentary that just came out called Foreigners in Their Own Lands. Foreigners in Their Own Lands. This is a public broadcasting documentary, PBS, and I really want to ask everybody to check that out, because maybe you're like me, that you thought you knew our history, but you really didn't. And the one thing I like to say to audiences is Google a map of the United States before 1848. And when you look at that map, you'll get a shock, because you'll see that 1/3 of the United States was Mexico. And Mexico was the first country to be invaded by the United States. And after the Mexican-American War, 50% of Mexico, half of Mexico, became the United States. Of course, Nevada, where you are at, California, where I am at, you know, New Mexico, Texas, Arizona, even parts, I think, of Utah became the United States, which were once Mexico. And so we can say to those that tell us, go back where you came from, we can say, we were here before the United States was the United States of America, okay? We were here before the United States. And in fact, NBC just did my ancestry, and through my great-grandmother on my mother's side of the family, we go back 14 generations in New Mexico, 14 generations. And then, I don't know, some of you may have heard about this new scientific find that they had, where they found the footprints of a Native American in New Mexico. And when they did the radioactive timing on those, they found out that those footprints are 23,000 years old. 23,000 years old. So we have to kind of remind people that the indigenous people of North America and South America, the two continents, these are the indigenous people, and this is their land, okay? This is their land. And that the true immigrants that came to this land were from Europe. These are the true immigrants, because all of the indigenous people of the two continents, this is their land. And so I think it's important for people to understand that. And I like to take that a little step further and just remind people that we are one human race, okay? That we are one human race, and our human race began in Africa. And when we think about that, that human civilization and Homo sapiens sapiens, who we are, this is our scientific name, that our human race began in Africa and then traveled across the planet. And as the people traveled across the planet, some of our tribe, they went to Europe, those northern countries where it was very cold. They lost the color of their skin. They got different color hair, different color eyes, but guess what? They were still Africans, okay? And so I like to say that we are all Africans of different shades and colors. And so then we can say to people that believe in white supremacy, you know what, just get over it, okay? Because you too are Africans of African descent. We are one human race, and we should never use the word race unless it's attached to the word human. We have a lot of different ethnic groups and cultures and nationalities, but only one human race.
And so, Dolores, yesterday, another thing that was very powerful about your documentary and your movie was that you always continued to fight the good fight. You always continued to represent folks, that nothing ever put you down. You were very positive. You always pivoted, and you continued in what you believed was the, you know, continuing to work for the working folks that needed you to support them. Currently, we have our struggles still as a community, right? Seguimos en la lucha, necesitamos la reforma migratoria. What can you tell us? What can you tell us, the audience that is partaking and listening in, what can we be doing? How can we be like Dolores Huerta, and how can we achieve something so monumental like you did when you were able to sign these grape growers or finally formalize your union? How can we achieve our goals that we've been advocating and voting and fighting for, it seems like decades now, and we're making very little progress on? I think we need those words of wisdom and hope.
Well, we know, and we can look at the lessons of the past, the way that we were able to achieve some progress in the past. And we never should get discouraged. I have to remind people, when I went to college, there were only like 5 of us Latinos, maybe on the whole campus. Now we know there are many Latinos that have over 50% of Hispanics on the campuses. So we know we're making progress. We have representatives like you have in Nevada, like we have in California and other states, Latino representation in our US Senate, in our US Congress, in our state legislature. So we know that we're making progress. But we still have a long way to go. One of the things that I like to share with people is when they think about the importance of us, a Latino community, you know, the average age of the Anglo community is 55. The average age of the Latino community is 11. And when we think of Social Security, we have to remind some of those folks out there that really kind of look down on us. Guess what? You're going to have to depend on these Latinos to fund your Social Security. And so since you are going to have to depend on them, then we've got to make sure that they get a good education so that they can have good careers and good professions so that they can pay more into our Social Security system, because you are going to have to depend on them. And we know that Latinos, like here in the Central Valley, we are now the majority here in the Central Valley of California. In other parts of California also, we know that in Texas, the census now shows that Latinos are, if not the majority, very near to be the majority in Texas. So that means, and I think there's about 10 states now where you have the Latino population that is going to be very influential when it comes to elections. And so this means that we have a lot of work to do on our end in terms of informing Latinos, educating them, not only to have a formal education, but also a civic education so that they understand the importance of their involvement in voting, and informing them on how to vote for progressive candidates, because this is a way that we can make the changes that we need to make. And then we can start going after the systemic racism that exists throughout our society. Our organization, the Dolores Huerta Foundation, we filed a lawsuit against our Kern High School district because they had expelled, thrown out of school, over 2,000 students, Black and brown students, in 1 year. In 1 year. We won that lawsuit, and now they have to do something about ending the systemic racism that they have in this Kern High School district, which has 70,000 students, by the way. It's a huge school district. And this is what we're doing. We're active in about 14 different school districts right now. We organize the parents, we organize the students, and then they can go to the school boards and they can make recommendations of things that they need to change. We also just passed in California ethnic studies. So ethnic studies are going to be a mandatory requirement for every high school student before they can graduate, okay? So although we have to bring that down to the elementary school level so that we can end the racism against people of color, because we know children are not born racist. They are made racist by the cultures or the traditions that they grow up in. So we've got to get ethnic studies down into the elementary school level and the pre-kindergarten level. And not only the whole issue of racism, but also the issue of sexism. So little boys can know that little girls are equal to them and they are not to be looked upon, you know, as inferior to men or sex objects. But the other thing too that we have to do is also talk to them about gender, that there's maybe people that are not a male or female, but a different kind of a gender. And so we could start also doing away with the homophobia that exists in our society. And I just want to say this too, in terms of our Latino community, we really have to talk to them about the issues of women's reproductive health, because we do have, you know, a legend of Catholicism, and many evangelicals and, you know, people that are evangelicals for their religion, they have a problem with the issue of women's reproductive rights, women's right to abortion, and so and also gay rights. So I like to quote Benito Juarez, who was the president of Mexico, the first indigenous president of Mexico after they got the independence from Spain. And he had a very great saying that I like to share it. I hope all of you do the same, to share it with people that you know that are confused on this issue of a woman's right to abortion. And this is the quote. Benito Juarez said, "El respeto al derecho ajeno es la paz." Respecting other people's rights is peace. If I, Dolores Huerta, chose to have 11 children, that was my choice. My daughter, Juanita, a former teacher, decides to have cats and dogs instead. That is her choice, okay? If we can remember that, and that what my daughter does not affect my life, you know what I mean? If somebody decides to have a lot of kids or no kids, that is their human right. That's their business. The same thing applies to somebody who wants to marry somebody of their own sex or falls in love with somebody of their own sex. That is their human right. what they do with their life, with their body, is their human right. And so we need to get that out to the Latino community, because we have friends and relatives that we know that are confused on this whole issue of women's right to abortion and people's rights to marry somebody of their own sex.
Dolores, you are our hero, not only for everything that you've done in the past, but everything you continue to do. Obviously, you're still equally as passionate, as engaged, and still, you know, getting involved in making sure we're rectifying wrongs. And that lawsuit that you spoke of is a prime example that you're still with us. You make all valid points that it's not just on one front that we need to also continue la lucha, but it's also with our LGBTQ plus community. It's also with feminists and you know, that gender equality that we're seeking, and also equality in pay for women, especially minority women, because we know sometimes we're doing double, triple the job and we're not being compensated for it. And I just want to thank you. Thank you for being a pionera. Thank you for being a luchadora, and for being una madre de nuestra comunidad, because I think that we are all looking up to you in hopes that we can do something to also contribute to our communities. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead, and then I'm gonna pass on to the panelists, but I'll let you give final remarks if you want to give.
No, I just want to say that I just want to thank United Way. We have partnered up with United Way here in our local area and to work on the issues of food distribution for our community and on other justice issues. And I just want to thank all of you for doing such a great job. In every community where United Way is, we know that we have a friend, we have a partner, and somebody that really cares about the poor people and the people of color in their community. So thank you.
Absolutely. Muchas gracias. And with that, I don't know if we're going to be able to top it. We've heard from an amazing individual, but I think these two will also be very, very fruitful in our conversations. So first, I'd like to introduce Professor Garcia from UNLV Boyd School of Law. He is a labor rights professor. That's his subject expertise. And so Professor Ruben Garcia, if you can just, I don't know if you saw Dolores, the movie,
Yes, I did.
and I'm sure you know all about it. So what are your, what insights can you give us in terms of the struggle and the struggles we continue to have in terms of the movement?
Oh, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be here with all of you, but particularly to meet Dolores Huerta for the first time, who is a former labor lawyer, union side labor lawyer, and a current teacher of labor law and labor rights. I am just so honored to be here in this panel and with all of you. So clearly what we saw in the movie historically is a struggle, as you heard, that continues today. Many of you are familiar with, you know, the history of the civil rights struggle, really, that Dolores was part of in California and other states. That also occurs here in Nevada, right? And the struggle for not just civil rights, but human rights, and the human right to organize and bargain with employers is really at the heart, I think, of the legacy that that Dolores Huerta, you know, leaves in Nevada and all throughout the world. You can see that legacy, I think, very clearly in today's current climate. Right? You can see the many people who've been inspired, the many men and women who've been inspired to organize and bargain collectively in Nevada, in the hospitality industry particularly. We have a very diverse labor movement here in Nevada. We have leaders, Latina leaders, and immigrant worker leaders that you're going to hear about as well from my colleague Bliss. But you have just a real sense that the legacy is very strong here in Nevada. You have the leader of the largest hospitality workers union actually in the country, a Nicaraguan immigrant, Gioconda Arguello-Klein. You have immigrant women in hotels and casinos here, bargaining, going on strike when needed. So you see all and also organizing politically. And I think in terms of the film, you saw the connection to political organizing that was pioneered by the farm workers and by Dolores Huerta. And so you have that continuing on here in Nevada today, or the house visits and the door-to-door political operation that's actually been so key in so many of the justice movements that we've seen. But in the midst of all this, in the midst of all that organizing, obviously there are still huge challenges, right? You have the twin impacts of the George Floyd killing last year and the COVID pandemic, making this a very precarious moment for a lot of workers and immigrants. You have workers who are trying to get their jobs back at various casinos and hotels, but sort of waiting for sort of the conditions to be so to the jobs to be offered back to them. And you have all kinds of continuing conflicts about racial diversity and racial struggle, even in the National Football League, as we see here in Las Vegas, or in the police community relations. So a lot of that is really why it's necessary, I think, and Dolores's point about political participation today and the need to organize politically makes it so clear that the kind of civil rights struggles are continuing today. And again, you have in the midst of all of that also the threat to democracy that we all saw in the last election. I mean, you can call it basically the idea of people who don't want to accept the will of the majority. And that is one of the challenges that is affecting workers and Latinos and Latinas directly because of the need, again, to petition for changes and improvements in conditions like was done obviously in the movie, but also, as you heard from our wonderful guest of honor, is continuing in so many other ways today. So again, I think it's just a matter of looking at history as a very long process, right? And so a lot of these struggles, as you saw from the movie, that took a very long time. All of these questions, they may not get, or these issues may not get resolved quickly, but I think what the movie really shows us is that this continuum of change, I think, is one that will continue, and I'm sure Dolores Huerta and others on this call will be part of that continuum. So it's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, Dolores Huerta, for your life of work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Garcia. And now we have also the great honor and privilege of having Bliss Requa-Trautz, who is our fearless leader of Arriba, Las Vegas Workers Center. And Bliss, what's your perspective? You work on a daily basis with all these day laborers, and you are living basically a day in Dolores's shoes 40 years ago, but now. So what can you give us from your insights, from your perspective, and connections you made with the movie?
Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to say what an honor and privilege it is to share this space with you, Maestra. Every day that we go out and fight, we are walking on a road that you built for us.
Thank you.
And hope to carry forward that torch. Arriba Las Vegas Worker Center, we're a worker center because I want to say, historically, when there are moments when there are real wins for Latinx workers, for immigrant workers, for communities of color, where there are real wins, there's also backlash. And so our organization is a worker center versus the union because we're facing the gigification or misclassification of workers who should be treated as workers. And instead are treated as independent contractors, or who consistently face barriers when exercising their rights as workers. I think we saw that a lot under the previous administration. Something that's very present for me right now is that this week, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas issued a memo in response to a lot of the work that has been led by workers here in Las Vegas and also in Gainesville, Georgia, as well as in Mississippi. When we look at the poultry raids in Mississippi, we see workers that did come together to exercise their rights in an organized fashion and speak out against wage theft and discrimination and sexual harassment, and win in lawsuit, but only to be faced with an ICE raid. Right? And so every day that we take those, every day we fight for those wins, and then when we take those hits, I think we look to your history and legacy. So here in Las Vegas, one of our big fights right now, we're working together and walking alongside a group of more than 400 painters who have experienced what's estimated to be more than $2 million in wage theft. And when they did speak out and raise their voice, they were threatened by their employer with immigration. And so much like in the past, we are accompanying these workers and hope that in this case, we do see the Department of Homeland Security uphold the rights of immigrant workers to organize instead of undermining the organizing that is taking place. That fight is because we work at the intersection of both immigrant rights and workers' rights, our fight right now is also in Washington, D.C., where at this moment, Congress has in front of them the opportunity to provide permanent residency to 11 million folks who have been fighting in this country, who have been working in this country for decades, right? We have folks that have been here for 25 or 30 years, and it's been that long since there was any real meaningful immigration reform. And so that fight's happening right now in Washington, D.C., and we're calling on Senate, we're calling on the White House to deliver on the promises that they made during this electoral campaign, this previous cycle, and hope that this is the year. We were in Washington, D.C. with a group of 30 workers and families from Las Vegas last month. On Sunday night, we were in Washington, D.C., full of hope, thinking we're close, we're finally close to permanent residency for millions of essential workers, TPS holders, and DACA holders. We were together that night on Sunday night when the parliamentarian's opinion was issued, which has been a sort of misleading process to disempower and misinform community. And that night, we're reading her opinion out loud together. We, hearts hit the floor. And that night we sat and we held each other and we cried. But then the next morning, we went out and we marched. And that's the legacy that you've given us that I think will carry forward. So thank you. Thank you for your legacy and for today.
No, you're welcome. And I worked the last amnesty bill in 1986. I worked that bill through the Congress. I lived in Washington for 4 months to make that happen. And we were able to make it happen. And we are going to get another amnesty bill. I don't know when. I know we have to probably get a few more senators that will help us. And we have to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate so we can get some of these laws passed. But the main thing is that we know we're not going to give up. We're going to keep on working to make it happen, because giving legal residency and citizenship to every immigrant group that came to the United States, that has always been the policy from day one when the Europeans landed here in our country, and then we will continue that policy. So we'll just have to keep working. Sí se puede.
And I want all of you to know that sí se puede is Dolores Huerta's phrase, okay? So if you attributed it to anybody else before, you need to give all the praise and all the laud to Dolores, because that's her phrase, even though other people may have hijacked it. So we need to give the credit to where the credit is due. We also learned through the film that she was stripped from a lot of textbooks as a co-founder of the farmers' work. Like, they minimized her role in the whole movement, how important she was, and actually, being the brainchild, I think, of a lot of the initiatives that the labor movement did. And so I think that it's time that we, set our ethnic studies and our history books. We need to correct the version of history that is being taught in our classroom. So we all need to be vigilant on the right information. And I also wanted to say that it's amazing that through the film, you kind of have this aha moment, like, you know, police brutality was happening when Dolores was having these struggles. And it really makes you think that, oh, it just didn't happen with Black Lives Matter. It's been happening over a very long period of time. And so there's all these intersection of social and socioeconomic and, you know, factors that we've been continuing to fight for and advocate for. And we hope to continue Dolores's legacy, because if anything she's taught us, you stay the course, you're above board, and we can do it in a nonviolent way. And that's what really spoke to me, is that if we're united, if we are a force together, we don't have to go to violence to, you know, right a wrong. We can do it in a peaceful manner. So I want to open it up for any questions. I'm sure there's people who want to ask you some stuff, Dolores. So I'm going to go ahead and I don't know, Janet, do you want to see if there's any questions that are being typed and you ask the questions?
We don't have any questions in the chat box yet. Just a lot of love for all of our panelists, but I'll make sure to let you know if we do have any.
I don't know, Ruben or Bliss, do you have any questions for our featured guest?
Well, I guess the question is, as I said, you know, we're facing this kind of crisis of, you know, even voting and elections in some states are not enough to make change. And I guess I wonder, do you think the struggle is really about sort of state by state, or is there anything that can be done, or, you know, on a national level or maybe a constitutional level that might be necessary to make sure that, you know, your vote doesn't count differently depending on which state you live in?
Well, I think it's more basic than that. I'm going to show you something that somebody showed me once. They said this is the number of Latinos that we have in the United States. Okay. This is the number of people that are eligible to vote. This is the number of Latinos that are registered to vote. This is the number that vote. So I didn't include in my paper fold up the number of people who could become citizens and have not yet become citizens to vote. So we can see that even though our population is large, that our civic engagement is very small. And so this is the work that we have to do. We have to get out there and inform and educate our Latinos why they have to vote. And we can't assume also that just because they register to vote that they're going to vote, because what we have in our Latino community, in my experience, has been this, and I've been doing this for what, 60 years, I think, or 70 years, is that a lot of Latinos don't vote because when they get their ballot and they think it's an examination, how much do you know? And they see all these names on there and they see propositions on there and they think, oh, I don't know who that is. And I don't know who that is. I don't know what this proposition is about. So they think that they have to fill the whole ballot out. And so they don't vote. As they say in Spanish, no quieren quedar mal. They don't want to make a mistake. So they just don't vote. And so we have to educate them. No, you just vote, you know, for the important positions, vote for the people that you know. If you don't know, it's okay to leave 1 or 2 or 3 of those positions blank. You don't have to vote everything that you don't know. And if they can, it gives them the confidence to know that they don't have to fill everything out. Vote for the important position, and always don't be afraid to ask somebody. You know, you're not going to be looked at as somebody that's dumb or doesn't know anything because you're asking somebody to help you fill that ballot. And having voting parties. And so I believe not only in voter registration, but in voter education. Educating people how to vote is very, very important. And we know that we have millions of people out there, Latinos, that we need to get them registered to vote and getting them to vote. And I think that's where it starts. And then also informing them. And I talked about the policies a little while ago about the issues of abortion, gay marriage, that again, some traditional Catholic families or evangelical families, that they're confused on those issues. And we have to tell them, you have to separate politics from religion. Do not let the fact that your family is anti-abortion determine the way that you're going to vote. Those are two separate issues. And so we have people that are voting, Latinos that are voting the wrong way because they think that they have to vote against people that are pro-choice or pro-abortion or pro-gay. So we have a lot of educational work that we have to do. And the way that our foundation does it, the Dolores Huerta Foundation, we do it by neighborhood. We do it family by family. We do house meetings. We do door-to-door canvassing, and we go out there and inform people. And we have a lot of time between now and the next elections to inform people, and not even to tell them how to vote, but tell them this is the criteria that you should be using when you vote.
Okay, Dolores, a few questions are coming in. So it says here, how can we involve our Latinx children to be part of La Lucha?
It's so important to involve our children. And my kids, they were out there on picket lines when they were 6 and 7 years old. They were out there passing leaflets in front of a grocery store when they were 6 or 7 years old. I always took them on all the marches with me. And I like to say to parents, if you want to take your child to a march or a demonstration, don't ask them, do you want to go? You ask them, do you want to wear your blue shirt or your brown shirt? Okay. Because if you ask them if they want to go, they're going to say no, because that's what kids do. They're going to say no. But if you ask them, okay, do you want to wear your brown shirt or your blue shirt? Then you're giving them a choice, but they don't have a choice as to whether they should go on a demonstration or march or vigil or even meetings. My kids always went to meetings. I like to tell a story about my daughter, Juanita, who became a teacher. And when she was only 3 years old, after one of our training sessions where she was walking in and out with her little dolls, walking in and out of the training session, when we got back to our boycott house in New York, she's on the phone, on her play phone. And I said, what are you doing, Juana? She says, I'm calling the people. I said, oh, are you calling them to come and picket? She looked at me, she said, they're not ready to picket. They're just going to pass leaflets. 3 years old, So, kids are sponges. And I meet young people all the time and say, well, I was just a little kid and my dad took me to this march and I got a picture with Cesar Chavez and they're so proud. And when you engage them when they're small, they feel that power. They feel the energy of being together with other people working for a cause. And that is the best lesson that you can give them, because then that gives them that confidence and they understand the power of unity, the power of people working together.
Another question, Dolores, is how did you come up with the so famous phrase that so many of us use now, si se puede?
Well, that actually happened in Arizona, where Cesar had done a 25 water only fast because they had passed a bill in Arizona that if farm workers went on strike, they could go to prison. If anybody said boycott anything, they could go to prison. And as we were organizing people to come and join Cesar during his fast, I was talking to some of these Chicano professionals, and they were saying to me, oh, you can't do all of that here in California. I mean, in Arizona. In California, you can do all that, but in Arizona, no se puede, no se puede. And my response to them was, sí se puede in Arizona. That evening, when I went back to, we had a mass and a rally every night. When I gave people that report that I responded, sí se puede, everybody jumped to their feet and they started clapping, sí se puede, sí se puede. And so I like to say it came out of the universe.
Beautiful. I love it when it's organic. So Erica wants to know, what does Dolores do for self-care? You gave so much of yourself for so many years and continue to do so. How do you take care of you?
Well, the one thing I do is I listen to a lot of music and I listen to a lot of news. I'm a vegetarian, so I don't eat meat. I gave up eating meat about 30 years ago. And I try to keep busy, keep my mind busy, keep my body busy, celebrate as much as I can with family, do as much dancing as I can, even if I'm by myself. When I hear music, I dance around the living room, climb, go up and down stairs, be active, take walks if possible, and as long as we keep our mind and our body active, And I'm just a news junkie, so I listen to the news every single day and find out what's going on. And it gets engaging people, reminding them, you've got to call your senator, you got to call your congressman, you've got to get engaged, you've got to get out there and do the marching, do the voting that we have to do.
Okay, 2 more questions. After having been a classroom educator, and how do you think we can better support teachers to provide the much needed equitable pedagogy and knowledge to our students that our students need for better career and educational outcomes? There are a lot of stalemates and restrictions on the educational system that hinder better outcomes in states where ethnic studies programs are not even available or outlawed.
This is the $1 million question, and we've got to have a $1 million answer for this. The education is at the foundation of everything that we need to change, because we've got to erase this ignorance that exists in our society that is bringing us so close to fascism here in the United States of America. So yes, we have to raise teachers' salaries. We have to, we pay prison guards the same amount of money that we pay teachers. Teachers have to go to college to get their degrees to be able to teach. And yet we have prison guards that make as much money as teachers do. So we've got to raise their salaries. We've got to have smaller classrooms. We've got to give them the support that they need, social workers, nurses, counselors, and make the classroom sizes a lot smaller. And so this is the main thing we have to do. Then we have to, again, engage in the curriculums that I mentioned before. And teachers have to be trained, by the way, on how to teach ethnic studies and women's studies, gender studies, civic studies, and science, labor studies. We have to do all of this. Our biggest investment that we should be right now, we should be arguing for, is to get more money for teachers. When we compare our budget in the United States with the Defense Department, which is trillions of dollars, compare that with the money that goes to teachers. Even here in California, our high school budget that they give for high schools is equal to the correctional institutions, to the prisons. So our tax dollars are going in the wrong direction and to the wrong people. So we've got to reduce our prison size, and we've got to give that money to our teachers. In California, we have been passing propositions, and we were successful in passing 2 propositions where we are taxing the millionaires. In California, if you make $1 million, you have to pay 3% more in state taxes. If you make $500,000, you have to pay 2% more. And if you make $250,000, you pay 1% more. With those additions, we have been able to bring over $12 billion into our schools. And then we've got to get back, and we've got to include music, drama, art. We've got to bring all of these programs, dance. I learned how to play the violin in my elementary school when I was 8 years old. I learned how to tap dance in my elementary school, because after the World War II, what they did is they brought in a lot of teachers, and they built beautiful buildings like down there. If you've been to Los Angeles, down there, the terminal for the buses there for the Amtrak, it's a beautiful building that was built during the right after the Depression. Okay. To get out of the Depression. So this is what we have to do. We have to put the money back into the people, like they're trying to do now with this Build Back Better Act that they have right now in the US Senate, that would provide 2 years of pre-college education. It would provide universal childcare, and of course, also expand our healthcare to include vision and dental. So, and all of this, we can make it happen, but it's got to be done with education and with voting.
Very, very awesome. So someone is asking, we are in Nevada, and she's asking, how do we encourage legislators to prioritize education funding in our state where we don't have an income tax?
Well, I think you have to do it like we did here in California. You just have to organize and get legislators elected that are going to go along and do what they have to do, If they're not going to be willing to raise the taxes of the rich to pay for the social programs that we need, then they don't need to be representing you. You have to get people in there that will represent and that are willing to fight for the people. That's the only way to make it happen. And by the way, we were trying to pass a bill in Nevada that people could die with dignity. And we were not able to get it through, even though the majority of Latinos support this, and also the majority of Catholics. So if people are near the end of their life, and if they have an illness that is terminal, that has no cure, and if they're suffering in agony, like my mother was when she died of cancer at the age of 51, then they can actually exit this life with the help of medication and with 2 doctors that have to oversee the procedure to make sure that there's no abuse there. We've been trying to get that bill through the Nevada legislature now for the last few years. And so I would kind of hope, I think that's a very humane way that people can end their life with dignity.
Last question here, Dolores. How can we tap the media to help tell our stories?
Well, I know that is something that we have to work on all over the United States, because so many people are getting such information that is false, and we want to get the true information out there. We want to get facts. And I think just one of the ways that we can do it is by going to the subscribers, the people that advertise on the different media stations. If we have a media station that is really not giving people the truth, then go to some of the sponsors. We know that as a Latino community, we have a lot of buying power. We have a lot of purchasing power, and we can say we need to make sure that we get more visibility for our Latino community, more information about our Latino community. It's kind of interesting that in the United States, we learn more about what's happening in Europe, in Russia, in Asia, than we find out what's happening in Mexico and Latin America, So people are more informed about what's happening in Europe than they are in the countries that are just to the south of us. But I think we could start making demands and go visit with some of these stations and say, look, we would like to see more of our programs out there, more of the stuff that's happening in our community. We need more visibility.
Yes, we won't get our side of the story portrayed or our facts being told unless we really hustle and try to get them covered. So Dolores, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us today, but I want you to stay put because we're going to get to the next part, the closing part. Before I give the thanks to the amazing team that made this possible, I do want to kind of turn the mic over to some of the participants, and I want you all to tell us, what does Hispanic heritage mean to you after this panel? So just popcorn, Janet, do you want to start us, and then maybe other people can popcorn off?
Yeah, absolutely. We have 6 minutes left, so I encourage you all to do like quick fire. I'm just also so honored, and I think we're all a little bit starstruck that you're with us, Dolores. So thank you, Hispanic Heritage Month. Just celebrate how beautiful we are. I think maybe we didn't believe it a lot growing up, but it's a time to celebrate. So thank you.
I'll pick up there again. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, as an individual who's African-American and have an African-American and Latino daughter, this is a learning experience for me, so I can teach her both sides of her history. So thank you.
And I just want to again say that this event, or certainly the story and the history of Dolores and the civil rights movement, really shows the power of collective action and the power of comunidad, and the collective action that we saw on display in the film is one that continues today. And despite the differences that we might have within our communities, I mean, not everyone is obviously the same. Not everyone speaks Spanish. Not everyone comes from countries to the south. Not everyone. Again, there's a lot of diversity within our community, and we are a very diverse community. But I think the power of sort of coming together and the power of collective action is really displayed by this story. And again, I want to thank you all for having me here, and thank you, Dolores, for being here.
Thank you.
I quickly also want to say thank you, Dolores. My daughter was just learning about you in school, so I can't wait to tell her when I get home. And another funny thing she mentioned was, she asked me, how do we celebrate? She asked me, how do we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month in our household? And I told her, honey, we don't celebrate it in a month, we celebrate it the whole year. It's a whole year of culture, it's a whole year of learning who you are. But specifically this month, it's about learning people like you who inspire us every day. So thank you so much for being in this forum, and it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. I would like to say to all of you that you can learn more about our work that we're doing. We're active in about 20 different school districts, organizing parents and students to make sure that the monies are appropriated the way that they should be, and trying to get some of these ethnic studies programs into our school systems, organizing the parents and the students to make this happen. If you want to learn more about our work, you can go to DoloresHuerta.org. That's DOLORES.org. And I just like to remind people one thing, that, and if we could, I don't know if people could unmute themselves or not, but if you can, I would ask you a very important question. Can I? May I? Okay, this is the question I'm going to ask you. And the question I'm going to ask you is, who's got the power? I want you to say, we've got the power. And when I say,
We've got the power.
yeah, and when I say what kind of power, your answer is people power.
Yep.
So can we do that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, let's go. Who's got the power?
We've got the
got the
power.
What kind of power?
People power.
So are we going to go out there and use our people power so that we can make some really important critical changes in our society? What do we say? ¿Se puede o no se puede?
Sí se puede.
That means not only does it mean yes, we can, but it also means yes, I can.
Sí se puede.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no, you're welcome. And I hope to see all of you maybe in the flesh, in the physical world soon.
Absolutely. We'd love that.
Thank
We
you
know
for-
that you've come by Nevada many a times to support us, and I know you're going to continue to come to your neighboring state because you do have a huge heart, and you nos acobijas como la Madre de Guadalupe a todos en este país.
Gracias. Muchas gracias. Appreciate it.
So just to end this amazing time, I mean, I'm sad to want to wrap it up. I don't want to, but we need to respect everybody's time at 3. I do want to give a shout out to all of the folks at United Way for helping us make this event possible. So I want to really acknowledge the worker bees behind this. So Janet Quintero, Tamika Ortiz, Jessica Etienne, Savannah Sibley, Dolores Hawk, Aaron, look, I'm not going to butcher your last name, Aaron K. So I'm just going to say Aaron K, Lori Mann, Jennifer Beckwith, Dana Boldazar, Julie Hutchins, James Jetter, Camry Stubbs, Chanel Townsend, Aubrey Kersey. Also want to thank El Grupo Estudiantil de la Voz. Those are our law school students who were able to allow us the streaming of your film, Dolores. I want to also thank my amazing, talented team here, Arlene Alvarez, because she was the one that connected us to you. And so Arlene deserves a great shout out and mention for making this all possible, the viewing at the Art House possible. And so I just want to say thank you to all of you who have made this amazing event happen for the benefit. And I think it just is uplifting, and it empowers us to continue doing the work each and every one of us can on a daily basis.
So thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.